All right, thank you for joining me on the first Transplutonic Monologue. It's the day before Halloween, so I wanted to keep things spooky and weird, and we're going to talk about the king, in my opinion, of weird, and that is, of course, the occultist and author Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant was, how do you describe Ken Grant? The king of weird, the king of warping your consciousness. If you've read any of his Typhonian trilogies, you know, minus the Magical Revival, that one's kind of more straightforward, and that's the best one to get into his work. He kind of like, yeah, come on, check out my stuff, and then you're like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense, and then you get to Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, and you're like, okay. It just keeps getting weirder from there, which I think is phenomenal because the books themselves have multiple aspects to them. Not only in the artwork chosen on the outside, the design, the artwork on the inside, usually by Steffi Grant, his wife, or Austin Osman Spare, among some other artists. It's kind of phenomenal how the books themselves are talismanic in a way, and they are definitely gateways in that way. And I mean that more in the, I guess you would say, psychological sense. But even still, those books have an immense power. Like when you start, if you ever have one, just open up to a random page and start reading. And no matter where you are in the book and what Ken Grant's talking about, it starts to make your consciousness and it starts to warp your perceptions a little bit because you don't know what he's talking about, but you know he's talking about something, and you can tell like it's just beyond your grasp, unless you're a master adept occultist, which I am not even close to being. What I love about Ken Grant's work is that he is leading you through the realm of the other, the outside. You know, he talks about that a lot. And his books do that. They are consciousness expanding tools in themselves. They put you in a state. And I think that was part of his plan. I don't think that that's simply my perception. I've had other people in my life and friends and occult savvy human beings who have never read Kenneth Grant's work, and I've shown them, like, here, read a couple pages out of this. And they go, whoa, man, this is... And they all basically say the same thing. I can tell he's saying something, but I cannot tell what he's saying. And I think that's partially the point. You know, he would talk about the concepts of the as if, and, you know, he wrote fiction too. He wrote fiction, I think, as a supplement and as even a sister, twin body of work to go along with the trilogies. I think we all kind of know that, but he was just I think he's a PhD and doctorate level occultist, in my opinion, which I know sounds crazy, but it's not. He did everything. I mean, his books not only are very well researched, whether you think his conclusions are historically accurate or not, that's not the point of his books. His books are not meant to be historically accurate. They're meant to piece together a magical picture. And magic isn't about being historically accurate. It's about magic. So that's why people have a problem with the gematria. It doesn't all work out. It's not exactly how it's like. He's telling you what he's experiencing and what was experienced. And he's giving you we're talking about the world of the subjective. You have to leave the scientific realm of facts and scientific materialism behind when you encounter Grant, I think that's huge in terms of understanding and comprehending the depth of his work. Even now, I'm still thinking about when I was on my Typhonian trek going through the books, and like, he knew what he was doing. Like that's what I think people don't get about Grant, and they write him off as an insane person. You know, like, oh, he's just some wayward Thelemite who just really has some wacky ideas about UFOs. It's like, no, No. Like I was listening to Chris Knowles the other day, and I love Chris Knowles and The Secret Sun and the idea of synchromysticism and all that stuff. This is no shade on Chris Knowles, but he was saying how he thought Kenneth Grant was a disorganized mind. And I said, I love you, Chris, but no, wrong. You just don't understand the level to which he's talking about things. And that's not an insult. That's just saying, I don't know how many people, if anybody, understands what Grant's talking about. There are very few people who I think do fully. But that's the point, is that they're magical tools. He was such a master magician. I think he said, I'm going to do the thing as hard as I can do it, which is magic, and I'm going to leave behind a legacy of this current that I've tapped into, and I'm going to make my writing, the books themselves, and all things associated with my work magical in themselves, to the point that they affect the reader and the observer and make them start to drift into magical consciousness. I really think that that's what Grant was doing. And to be that well-read, to be that, to be an actual practitioner for his whole life. Read about the New Isis Lodge. That was in the 50s. You read about all that stuff. Like he was doing that way before he started writing. And I just think he was he deserves way more credit than he's given. And I would love to see a Grantian revival. As much as I love being the cool kid, the hipster who's like, they're like, yeah, Aleister Crowley. I'm like, yeah, you ever heard of Kenneth Grant? And they're like, who? When I go to the bookstore here, the cult bookstore, I'm like, you guys got any Kenneth Grant books? This was back before I bought them all. And he'd be like, who's that? And I thought I was the coolest motherfucker ever. Like, you don't know who that? All right, well, clearly you guys don't know anything. So as much as I love to remain being the cool kid, I do think we need just a massive Grantian revival, and people need to start looking at his work, because I think there's a lot of great minds in the occult world right now who could really apply their talents and their knowledge and help bear these things out in Grant's work, especially if the more we talk about it. And I'm not saying that's not happening. I know there are groups online that talk about it, the Primal Grimoire page, the stuff on Facebook, but I think there needs to be more in terms of, like, especially the podcast world. I feel like the podcast and the occult publishing world, Starfire's great. Obviously they publish Grant's work, but just the communication around his work, I think, needs to be stepped up in terms of this crazy multimedia world. Like, if we're going to suffer all the ills of modernity, we need to be using some of these technologies and things to our benefit. So let's discuss Grant's work. I want to see more occultists doing that, and I want you to, look at the covers of his books. Like, it's weird. It's spooky. It's like, it looks like Halloween, and I think that's kind of why I decided to talk about this today, is because that's what he imbues through his writing, is just the creepy, the weird, the strange, the H.P. Lovecraft tentacled thing crawling out from the tunnel and leaving slime on the wall. Like, it's meant, and whether that's representative of the deeper levels of consciousness or his treks through the Qliphote and all that kind of stuff. It's artistic. He was also an artist. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so many facets. How could you not be somewhat artistic when your wife is Steffi Grant and your homeboy is Austin Osman Spare? So really look into his works. I recommend buying the books from Starfire, whatever ones are available. Reading what you can online. There's a lot of articles. There are some decent podcasts. There's not a lot. There are some decent podcasts. I think there's a Hermetica episode with, well, God, what is his name? I forget dude's name, but there's a lot of good information out there. You just dip, I call it starting the Typhonian trek. Really start from the beginning, magical revival, and work your way through, and just you'll start to understand, like, oh, this is more than just like a erudite book study on occultism. This book is like magic incarnate almost. I know that's like a big thing to say, but they really do have a weird feeling, especially if you read them at this time of the year. It's like perfect. It's like it's it's the pumpkin spice latte of the occult world, like in terms of how well it fits the season. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I really appreciate you listening to this. Please check out Grant's work. Get at me with some ideas, or if you've read it, if you have any insights that I may have missed, if you think I'm wrong about anything, I'd just love to talk to you guys. So have a good day.